The night shift at the alien research base was always quiet. And for Evan, the human janitor, it was the same routine every evening. He walked with his cleaning cart through long metal halls while humming softly to himself. The air smelled like cold steel, and only the soft buzzing of the lights kept him company. Most workers had gone home, and the few soldiers on duty were locked inside monitoring rooms. Evan was used to silence, but tonight something felt different. He sensed it the moment he entered the eastern wing of the base. The lights flickered in a strange rhythm, as if the building itself was nervous. A deep vibration ran through the floor and made his mop bucket shake. He stopped walking and listened closely. At first, he thought it was just a machine failing. But then he heard a sound that made his skin crawl. It was not a machine, and not a human voice either. It was a cry, long and painful, filled with fear and something else he could not understand. The sound echoed through the hall like a wounded animal calling for help. Evan's heart started beating faster. He had heard strange things on this base before, but never anything like that. Probably nothing, he whispered to himself, trying to stay calm, but the cry came again, louder this time. And it shook the metal walls around him. His hands tightened around the handle of his cleaning cart. His mind told him to walk away, to stay out of whatever danger was waiting ahead. But something inside him would not let him leave. Evan slowly pushed the cart aside and followed the sound. He stepped into a darker section of the hall where one of the ceiling lights had completely gone out. The shadows there were thick and cold. It felt like walking into another world. He took a deep breath and continued forward. As he moved deeper into the restricted wing, the air grew warmer. The smell changed too. It became smoky, like something had been burned recently. Evan reached a heavy security door with bright red letters flashing above it. It read "Authorized personnel only." He knew he had no right to open it. But the cry behind the door sounded desperate, like someone was begging. Another tremor shook the floor, and for a second, he thought the door might fall apart from the force behind it. Evan swallowed hard and placed his hand on the control panel. It scanned his face and flashed a red warning, denying him access. He looked around and noticed a maintenance ladder leading up to an open vent. He climbed the ladder carefully and crawled through the metal vent. The air inside was hot and dry, but it carried the same heartbreaking cry forward. After a few minutes of crawling, he reached another vent. Below him was a large containment chamber. And when Evan looked through the metal grate, his eyes widened in shock. A massive creature lay chained in the center of the chamber. A dragon, a real dragon, bigger than any vehicle he had ever seen. She had deep crimson scales, cracked in many places as if she had been tortured or starved. Her wings were torn, one of them dragging across the floor. Her chest rose and fell heavily, each breath sounding painful. But what shocked Evan the most were her eyes. They were not wild or angry, they were full of fear, pain, and something he never thought a dragon could, show sadness. She lifted her head slowly, her long neck trembling as she tried to speak. "Help, please." Her voice cracked like breaking stone. Her huge body shook as she tried to move. The chains around her neck and legs glowed with electric energy. Every time she pulled, sparks jumped and burned her skin. Evan's heart dropped. He had expected a monster, not a mother crying. He scanned the chamber and saw something else. Something small and shaking inside a transparent containment pod on the far side of the room. A young dragon, maybe only a few months old, trapped inside a rising cloud of smoke and fire. The child's small claws scratched the glass, leaving trails of ash behind. The mother dragon turned her head toward the pod and let out another heartbreaking cry. "My child. My baby. Someone. Please help." Evan understood now. The mother was not dangerous. She was desperate, and the soldiers in the base must have captured both dragons and separated them. Maybe they wanted to study dragons, or maybe they were afraid of them. But none of that mattered to Evan in this moment. What mattered was the child's fading glow inside the pod. He checked the panel outside the chamber, and his stomach twisted when he read the warning message. The containment pod was about to be purged in 10 minutes. Purged meant destroyed, and no one else was coming to save the child. The dragon mother's eyes suddenly focused on Evan as if she could sense him through the vent. Her voice broke into a whisper. "Human, you hear me? Please, save my child." Evan froze. His mind raced. He was just a janitor. He had no weapons, no training, and no power on this base. He should run. He should call the soldiers. He should follow protocol. But he looked at the small dragon again, saw how weak it was becoming. And something inside him refused to step away. Evan pushed the vent open quietly. He landed on the floor with shaking legs. The dragon mother watched him with wide, hopeful eyes. "You came," she said softly. Evan took a deep breath and whispered. "I'll try." Those two simple words made the dragon mother lower her head. As if she was praying, Evan walked toward the crackling containment pod. Knowing every step could mean death. But he could not turn back now, not when a life was crying for help. And somewhere deep inside the base, an alarm began counting down the final minutes. Suspense tightened around the chamber like a trap ready to close. And Evan stood alone between a dying mother, a trapped child, and a decision that could change everything. Evan stood frozen in front of the containment pod, the young dragon's body glowing weakly inside the rising smoke. The screen beside the pod showed a countdown timer, blinking in bright red. 8 minutes left until purge, 8 minutes until the base automatically destroyed anything inside. The dragon mother let out a low, trembling growl, not of anger, but of fear. Her huge body shifted slightly, and the electric chains around her tightened, sparking violently. Evan winced as he watched pain shoot through her. She kept her eyes on her child, and then on Evan, trusting a simple human janitor more than the whole base of trained soldiers. Evan touched the control panel of the pod and quickly realized something terrible. The purge system was locked behind military codes far above his clearance. There was no cancel button, no override option he could reach. He had no time to run for help. Soldiers would take 5 minutes to arrive at this restricted area, and they would never risk opening the chamber for a dragon. He looked around desperately, searching for anything he could use. Then he noticed something the soldiers had ignored. On the right side of the chamber was a maintenance shaft. A narrow tunnel large enough for a human to crawl through, but too small for soldiers in armor. It connected to the lower part of the pod chamber, the mechanical heart of the system. Evan's throat dried as he stared at the dark opening. The heat coming out of the tunnel felt like standing in front of an oven, but it was the only way. "You cannot open the main door," the dragon mother whispered weakly. "The humans sealed it. Only this way. Hurry." Evan nodded, even though fear pressed heavily on his chest. He approached the shaft and felt hot air hitting his face. The metal floor around it was already warping from heat, and the faint hiss of burning wires echoed inside. 7 minutes left. Evan removed the straps from his janitor belt and tied them around his hands so he wouldn't burn them on the metal. He took one last look at the mother dragon. Her huge eyes were wide, filled with the kind of fear only a parent could feel. "I will come back with your child," Evan said. Unsure if he was promising too much, then he lowered himself into the shaft. The metal walls were hot and sharp, and each movement sent a wave of heat into his lungs. He crawled forward slowly, his elbows and knees shaking as he pushed himself deeper into the tunnel. Sparks dropped from overhead wiring, burning holes into his shirt. The air was thin and tasted like smoke and metal. The further he crawled, the louder the child's weak cries became. It was like the little dragon could sense someone coming every few seconds. Evan heard a small thumb-tiny claws struggling against the glass. 6 minutes left. the tunnel suddenly sloped downward. Forcing Evan to slide on his stomach, the metal was so hot it felt like touching fire. His belt straps did not protect him completely, and he bit his lip to stop himself from screaming. He had to keep going. He reached a junction in the shaft where two paths split. The left side was filled with broken cables and live sparks shooting in every direction. The right side was narrower but seemed safer. Evan squeezed into the right tunnel, even though it felt like crawling into a burning pipe. The crying grew louder. More desperate, he was close. 5 minutes left. Evan reached a metal grate that blocked his path. Through the small gaps, he could finally see the dragon child clearly. The little creature was curled up on the floor of the pod. Wings wrapped tightly around itself, smoke filled the chamber like a thick fog. The child's golden eyes blinked slowly, too weak to cry louder. Evan grabbed the grate, but it didn't move. It was bolted shut from the outside. He looked at the bolts, and then at his janitor belt. On the belt was a single small Tula flathead scraper he used to remove dried glue from floors. It was not meant for metal bolts, but it was all he had. He jammed the tool into the bolt and twisted with all his strength. His hands shook as he worked, sweat dripping from his forehead and stinging his eyes. Every spark in the tunnel made him flinch. The first bolt loosened, the second refused to move. For minutes left, Evan pushed harder, pain shooting through his wrist. Finally, the second bolt snapped loose with a loud metallic pop. He quickly yanked the grate free and slid into the pod chamber. The heat inside was unbearable, like standing inside a storm of fire. Evan crawled on his knees and lifted the young dragon gently. The child was hot to the touch, its breaths short and shallow. It opened one glowing eye and looked at him, confused but hopeful. "It's okay. I've got you," Evan whispered. He turned back toward the tunnel, but suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the chamber. The purge system had detected unauthorized entry. The countdown accelerated. 3 minutes left. Evan crouched low and rushed toward the great opening, holding the young dragon close to protect it from falling sparks. The tunnel behind him groaned under the weight of heat damage. The metal ceiling dropped a shower of sparks and bent inward. Narrowing the path, 2 minutes left, he pulled himself into the tunnel. But the young dragon's tail caught on a piece of broken metal. Evan quickly freed it, scraping his own arm in the process. Blood ran down his elbow, but he kept crawling behind him. Fire burst inside the pod chamber, reaching toward the tunnel like a hungry creature. The heat became so intense that Evan felt his back burning through his clothes. He pushed forward faster, coughing, eyes watering from the smoke. "1 more minute," he gasped to himself. "Come on, move." The tunnel shook again, making the metal rattle loudly. Something huge outside the base roared in the distance. The walls trembled as if a giant was approaching. Evan did not know what it was. But he knew time was running out. 30 seconds left. He reached the end of the shaft and kicked open the final grate, tumbling into the hallway with the dragon child in his arms. The mother dragon sensed them immediately and let out a cry that shattered the room with emotion. Evan stumbled toward the chamber door, coughing and sweating. But before he could take another step, he heard heavy boots approaching fast. Soldiers were coming, weapons ready. And they saw Evan holding the young dragon. They raised their guns instantly. And the countdown behind him hit 20 seconds. The hallway lights flickered wildly as Evan stumbled out of the maintenance tunnel with the young dragon in his arms. His breath came in sharp gasps. His skin burned from sparks and flames. And smoke clung to his clothes like dust from a dying furnace. The little dragon pressed its head weakly against his chest, shaking with every breath. The soldiers who rushed toward him froze the moment they saw what he was carrying. Their boots screeched against the floor as they stopped. Weapons raised and eyes wide with confusion. "Put the creature down." A soldier shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Evan tightened his hold on the child, stepping backward instinctively. The soldier's hands shook as he aimed. Fear spread through the entire squad like a wave. None of them had ever been this close to a living dragon. Especially a young one. "She's not attacking," Evan yelled. "She's scared. She's dying." But the soldiers did not lower their weapons. Their training told them dragons were dangerous. Unpredictable monsters that killed without warning. Then something unexpected happened. The young dragon lifted its head weakly and looked at the soldiers. Its golden eyes glowed softly, not with rage, but with fear and confusion. It let out a small sound, a trembling, fragile chirp, not a roar. The soldiers hesitated. Lowering their guns slightly, Evan felt a small wave of hope. He stepped sideways toward the chamber where the mother dragon was chained. The chains rattled loudly as she leaned forward, her huge eyes filling with tears of relief when she saw her child. But the panic didn't end. The countdown alarm behind Evan screamed louder. 15 seconds left until purge. 15 seconds until fire would flood the entire pod chamber and kill anything inside it. Evan turned to run, but the hallway lights went red as the base activated lockdown mode. A thick metal barrier began sliding down from the ceiling in front of him. It would seal the corridor completely. He sprinted toward it. Clutching the child against his chest, sweat and smoke blurred his vision. His legs burned from crawling and running through fire. 10 seconds left. He pushed himself harder. Almost slipping on the smooth metal floor, the barrier dropped lower with each passing heartbeat. 7 seconds left. Soldiers shouted behind him. Some running forward, others yelling for the system to stop the lockdown. 5 seconds left. Evan dove forward with all his strength. Sliding on his stomach just as the barrier slammed down behind him, the heavy metal door shook the floor. Trapping the soldiers on one side and Evan on the other, he lay on the ground, coughing. Holding the child close to protect her from the impact, the alarm blared again, and flames surged inside the containment pod far behind them. The purge activated. Fire roared inside the chamber, bright enough to cast orange light through the hallway vents. But Evan had gotten the child out just in time. If he had been even 3 seconds slower, both of them would have died. The mother dragon watched him through the cracks in her chains. Her eyes glowed like burning coals. But there was no anger, only deep, painful worry for her child. Evan pushed himself up slowly, trembling from exhaustion. He carried the child toward her, step by step, until he stood only a few feet from her massive head. The dragon mother lowered her neck carefully, as if trying not to crush the floor with her weight. Evan held out the young dragon, who made a weak sound and stretched her wings toward her mother. A deep, emotional rumble vibrated through the chamber as the mother gently touched her nose to her child. Sparks of warm golden light shimmered between them, a soft, magical glow Evan had never seen before. The child nestled into the mother's snout, too weak to stand, but comforted by her presence. The mother dragon whispered, "Thank you. Human, thank you." But the moment of peace did not last. A loud explosion shook the base. Dust falling from the ceiling like ash. Soldiers on the other side of the barrier shouted in fear. Emergency alarms blared across the entire facility. What now? Evan whispered, backing away as the floor shook under his feet. The mother dragon lifted her head suddenly, her eyes widening with terror. She turned toward the far wall and whispered in a trembling voice, "He is coming." Evan felt his stomach drop, if the mother was afraid. Then whatever was coming had to be more terrifying than anything inside this base. Then the wall at the end of the chamber cracked. A long, deep roar tore through the building. The sound vibrated through Evan's bones and made the soldiers behind the barrier scream. It was a roar filled with fury and heartbreak. Evan looked up at the mother dragon. Is that your?" "Yes," she whispered. "My mate." the Father. He has come for us. Evan swallowed hard. The father dragon was enormous, bigger, stronger, and more powerful than the mother. And now he believed someone had harmed his family. Another roar boomed so loudly that the lights exploded in a burst of sparks. The walls shook as the father dragon landed heavily outside the base. The ground trembled under Evan's feet as if a small earthquake had hit. The mother dragon tried to pull her chains again, her wings trembling violently, but they held tight. Burning her skin with each movement, Evan stepped closer to her. "It's okay. I have your child. I'm not your enemy." The mother looked at him with eyes full of fear and hope. Then the metal wall shook again, harder this time. A massive claw tore through the surface like paper. Soldiers screamed on the other side. The dragon father was breaking in. Evan held the young dragon tightly, protecting her with his arms. The chamber filled with dust, sparks, and the sound of cracking metal. And as the wall behind him split open, Evan realized something terrifying. If the soldiers misunderstood the father's arrival as an attack, a full war could start in the next few seconds. The metal wall behind Evan shook like it was made of paper. Deep cracks spread across the surface as the father dragon struck it again from outside. Each hit made the whole base tremble, dust raining from the ceiling like sand in a storm. The hallway lights flickered and died, leaving the room in dim red glow from emergency lamps. Evan clutched the young dragon tighter, shielding her with his body as a monstrous roar thundered through the chamber. It was a roar of fury, fear, and heartbreak, one that told the entire world that a parent had come for his child. The soldiers trapped behind the lockdown barrier screamed orders. "Everyone hold positions, don't shoot unless necessary." But their voices shook with panic. They had no idea how to face a creature that could tear steel like cloth. The mother dragon watched the breaking wall with wide, terrified eyes. Her wings trembled violently as she struggled against her chains. The electric restraints burned her skin every time she moved, sending shocks that forced her to collapse again and again, but she still kept trying. "My mate. He thinks our child is dead. He will destroy everything," she whispered, her deep voice cracking with pain. Evan felt fear sink deep into his bones. If the father dragon entered the base in rage, no one inside would survive, not the soldiers, not Evan, and not even the mother. She was already too weak. Held down by chains meant to torture her into silence. Another deafening crash hit the wall. A massive claw ripped through, tearing a long gash across the metal. Sparks flew like tiny fireflies as steel shredded under the force. Through the opening, Evan saw a colossal golden eye staring inside. Burning with grief and fury, the father dragon had found them. The mother let out a soft cry. "Please, mate, our child lives. Please see." But her voice was too weak to reach him. Evan looked at the broken wall, then at the mother dragon, then at the child in his arms. He knew what he had to do. He needed to show the father dragon the truth before the soldiers panicked and attacked. But another blast shook the room. The father dragon roared so loudly that it shattered nearby glass panels. The sound nearly knocked Evan off his feet. The mother dragon lowered her head and squeezed her eyes shut. "I cannot warn him. My chains, they hold my fire. They block my call," she whispered helplessly. Evan looked at the chains glowing with electricity. Thick metal coils wrapped around her neck, wings, and legs, designed to restrain even a giant creature like her. Each time she struggled, the chains tightened and burned her again. Evan stepped closer, still holding the young dragon. "If I break the chains, can you calm him?" The mother's eyes widened with shock. "Human. If you break them, I will protect you with my life, and he will listen to me. But the chains? They are guarded." She turned her eyes toward a control box at the far end of the chamber. A metal crate covered in blinking red lights. That was the power source controlling her restraints. Before Evan could move, the broken wall exploded inward. A huge piece of metal flew across the room like a flying blade and slammed into the floor only inches from Evan's feet. The impact sent a shockwave through the chamber, knocking Evan backward. The father dragon's head pushed through the opening. His giant horns scraped the ceiling. His sharp teeth flashed in the emergency red lights. His breath came out like smoke mixed with lightning. His roar shook the entire facility. The mother dragon tried to speak. "Made listen, our child," but another shock from the chains made her collapse with a cry of pain. Her wings went limp, burned, and trembling. Evan's heart pounded. He had seconds before the father dragon ripped the entire wall open. Soldiers on the other side shouted desperately, "Dante fire! Dante fire! Hold! Hold!" But he knew they were scared. Their fingers trembled on their triggers. One wrong shot would start a war. Evan rushed toward the control box with the young dragon in his arms. The floor vibrated under him, making it hard to run straight. He slid behind a fallen beam and crouched low. The control box was locked behind a thick layer of reinforced metal. He tried to pull it open, but the panel didn't budge. It needed a keycard he didn't have. Another roar shook the air, more desperate than before. Evan looked over his shoulder and saw the father dragon forcing his massive body halfway through the wall. Sparks rained off his scales. His claws ripped deeper into the building. The mother dragon screamed, "He thinks you are hurting our baby. Run." Evan didn't run. Instead, he placed the young dragon on the ground gently and grabbed the closest tool he had, his metal floor scraper. It was dull, bent, and never meant for combat. But it was the only thing he could use. He forced the sharp edge into the seam of the control box. Sparks flew as he pried it open with all his strength. Sweat dripped down his face. His arms burned as he pushed harder. The metal bent slowly, painfully, behind him. The father dragon finally tore the wall apart, breaking into the chamber with a roar that shook the world. Soldiers screamed in terror. Some dropped their weapons. The ground cracked under the father's massive claws. He lifted his head, smelling the air, seeing the mother chained. Seeing his child lying weak on the ground, his roar turned into pure rage. He took a step forward, and Evan screamed, "Stop! Look at her." The young dragon lifted her tiny head and let out a small cry. Weak but clear, the father froze, his giant eyes snapping to her. His whole body trembled in that exact second. The control box finally snapped open in Evan's hands. He reached inside and ripped out the glowing power core without thinking. The chains on the mother dragon burst with sparks, then shattered. The mother dragon stood tall for the first time, opening her wings wide. Her eyes burned bright gold as she stepped between Evan and her mate. "It was the human," she whispered. "He saved our child." The father dragon's rage faded as realization spread across his face. His eyes softened with shock, and everything went silent. The chamber fell silent after the mother dragon's chains shattered. The glowing sparks faded slowly, drifting down like dying stars. For the first time since Evan entered this nightmare, the mother dragon stood tall and free, her wings spread wide even though they were torn. And her eyes shone bright gold, but the silence did not last long. Because standing in the crushed opening of the destroyed wall was the father dragon. He was enormous, far larger than the mother. His head almost brushed the ceiling, his horns crackled with energy, and his scales glowed with a deep blue light that looked like flickering lightning trapped inside stone. His chest rose and fell like thunder. The father's eyes, burning gold and blazing with fury, locked onto Evan first, a small human, covered in soot and blood, standing beside his injured child. Evan froze. His legs felt weak, his breath stuck in his throat. He could not tell if the father dragon saw him as an enemy or the savior of his child. The mother dragon stepped in front of Evan and their child. "Mate, listen. He saved her," she said softly. Her voice shaking from exhaustion, the father dragon growled. A low sound that made every metal plate in the walls tremble. His pupils narrowed, focusing on Evan. Smoke curled from his nostrils. His wings spread so wide that the chamber darkened under their shadows. Still, he did not attack. He hesitated. Something in his eyes changed. The young dragon, weak but alive, lifted her tiny head and made a soft, trembling sound. "Papa." The father's breath caught. The fierce glow in his eyes flickered. He stepped closer, lowering his head so gently that it surprised Evan. He nudged the little dragon with the side of his snout. A deep, broken rumble came from his chest, full of relief, love, and pain. The mother dragon leaned against him. Their wings touched. Their foreheads pressed together for a moment. The giant base felt too small to contain this powerful emotional reunion. Evan took a slow step back, not wanting to interrupt, but the father dragon's eyes snapped toward him again, this time softer. Observing, thinking, judging, he lowered his head until he was at Evan's level. The air smelled like smoke and storm clouds. Evan's heart pounded so hard he felt it in his ears. The father dragon took a deep breath, and then bowed, a massive, gentle bow, lowering his head in respect. Evan almost collapsed from shock. This was a creature the base feared. A creature strong enough to destroy armies, but he bowed too. Him, a janitor, before Evan could speak. A loud alarm rang through the building. This alarm was different, high-pitched, urgent, almost screaming. Warning, unauthorized detonation detected. Warning, power core instability. The soldiers behind the lockdown barrier panicked. What now? Another breach? No. It's coming from inside the building. The father dragon lifted his head, sniffing the air sharply. The mother dragon turned toward the far corridors in fear. Evan felt the floor vibrate slightly under his boots. Not like the heavy tremors from the dragon father's footsteps. This was different, sharper, rhythmic. Something was moving inside the base. Something small, but dangerous. The mother dragon's eyes widened with recognition. No, it cannot be. Before Evan could ask, the hallway lights exploded one by one. A fast shadow moved past them, too quick for Evan to understand. Too silent for something so deadly. Then a small blast shook the left side of the chamber. A spray of sparks shot out like fireworks. Evan backed away. The father dragon growled. Stepping protectively around his family, out of the smoke stepped a figure in dark armor, a human. But not a soldier from the base, someone else. Someone who did not belong here. He held a detonator in one hand and a strange plasma blade in the other. His helmet reflected the red emergency lights like a mirror of death. So the dragons survived, the armored man said in a cold voice, and the janitor ruined everything. Evan's heart dropped. This was the saboteur. The one who started the purge. The one who planted explosives in the base. The one who wanted the dragons dead, and now he was standing right before them. "You're insane," Evan snapped, stepping forward even though his body shook. "There's a child here. What kind of person does this?" The saboteur tilted his head slightly. "A person who understands danger," he said calmly. "A dragon child grows into a dragon monster. I'm simply preventing a future war." The father dragon growled loudly. The entire room vibrated as if the air itself feared him. The saboteur stepped back but kept the detonator raised. "Ah, dragon," he said. "One step closer and I blow this entire wing apart. Dragons, humans. The whole base, everyone dies." The mother dragon curled her wings around her child. Protecting her completely, the father dragon stayed still. His fury boiling under the surface, Evan was the only one close enough to move without triggering the man's fear. The saboteur pointed his blade at Evan. "You should have stayed emptying trash cans. You don't understand the scale of this war." But Evan lifted his chin. "No," he said firmly. "You don't understand the scale of this family." Before the saboteur could react, the little dragon let out a weak but sharp cry. A tiny burst of golden fire shot out, not enough to burn, but enough to blind the saboteur for a heartbeat. The father dragon roared. The mother dragon pushed forward, and Evan lunged. Evan lunged toward the saboteur with asterisk. Every ounce of strength he had left the moment the little dragon's burst of golden fire flashed across the room. The armored man lifted his hand to shield his visor. That single second was all Evan needed. He grabbed the saboteur's arm, and both of them stumbled backward into a shower of sparks. The saboteur recovered quickly. He shoved Evan with surprising force, sending him sliding across the floor. Evan's back hit a metal beam, sharp pain shooting down his spine. Still, he didn't let fear take over. The mother dragon and child were behind him, and the father dragon was inches from attacking the intruder. But the saboteur raised the detonator in warning. "Move." "Dragonor, I turned this entire chamber into a grave." The father dragon snarled, lightning dancing across his scales. His wings spread wide as he positioned himself between the saboteur and his family. His massive body blocked half the chamber, giving Evan time to stand again, coughing and shaking. The saboteur pointed his plasma blade toward Evan. "You should have stayed small," he said coldly. "You helped them live. But now you all die together." Evan's fists tightened. His legs trembled from exhaustion. Burns covered his arms, and smoke burned his lungs. But his resolve only grew stronger. He took a step forward, then another. "You won't touch them," he said, breathless but firm. "You won't hurt this family again." The saboteur stared at him like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Family," he repeated. "You think monsters deserve that word?" The mother dragon growled softly. "We are not monsters. Our kind protects our young and honors those who show courage." The saboteur laughed, a dark, broken sound. "Courage is pointless without power, and I have the power to end all of you." He pressed a button on his wrist. The base lights flickered. Deep within the walls, something hummed low. Sharp, dangerous. Evan's eyes widened. "What did you do?" The saboteur lifted the detonator proudly. "I connected every explosive in this base to the power core. One push of this button, and the whole base becomes fire." The father dragon lunged forward with fury, but the saboteur aimed the detonator right at him. "Careful, monster," he hissed. "One wrong move and your child becomes ashes." The father dragon froze mid-step, his claws digging into the floor, metal bending beneath him. His breath came out in a storm of lightning. But he did not move closer. He could not risk his family. The mother dragon was shaking not from fear, but from rage. "You hurt my baby. You tortured me. And now you want to kill us all." She growled, her voice shaking the air. The saboteur stepped back toward the reactor hallway. "That dragon child will grow into a weapon," he said. "And the humans who fear your species will finally be right." Evan felt something snap inside him. Not fear, not pain, but anger. A deep anger he had never felt before. "You don't get to decide who deserves to live," he said. Stepping forward, "You're not saving anyone. You're just afraid of things you don't understand." The saboteur pointed the plasma blade at him. "And you're a fool, a human janitor defending dragons. They will eat you when they're hungry." Evan shook his head. "No," he said simply. "Because they trust me." And then he looked at the mother and father dragon. "And I trust them." The saboteur stared at him with disbelief, and then charged. Evan dodged the first slash of the plasma blade, but the second cut across his shoulder. Heat burning through cloth and skin. He gasped, but didn't fall. He used his momentum to grab the saboteur's wrist, twisting it hard. The detonator flew out of the saboteur's hand, spinning, sliding, landing dangerously close to the young dragon. The mother dragon gasped, covering her child with her wings. The saboteur shoved Evan again, running toward the detonator. But the father dragon slammed his claw down in front of him. The floor cracked under the impact. The saboteur jumped back in fear. The father dragon roared. A roar filled with electricity and fury, but he did not attack. He blocked the detonator with his claw. Keeping it from the saboteur, Evan rushed forward again, tackling the saboteur from the side. The armored man's helmet hit the ground, cracking the visor. Now Evan could see part of his face, a pair of angry, scared eyes. "You don't understand," the saboteur hissed. Gasping, "I saw what dragons did on other worlds. I saw entire cities burn." Evan clenched his teeth. "That wasn't them," he said. "That wasn't this family. Stop blaming them for things others did." The saboteur kicked him in the stomach and scrambled toward the detonator again. But this time, the father dragon moved fast, too fast for his size. He lowered his head and exhaled a gust of lightning-filled wind. Not enough to kill, but enough to throw the saboteur across the chamber. The man slammed into a wall and dropped his blade, coughing violently. His detonator was still trapped under the father's massive claw. The saboteur tried to get up again, but the mother dragon stepped forward, her wings glowing with rage. "You hurt my child," she said softly. "And yet this human saved her. You call us monsters. But who tried to kill a baby here?" The saboteur's voice cracked. "You're all dangerous." Evan walked to him slowly, breathing hard. "No," he said. "You are." The father dragon lifted the detonator with his claw and gently placed it in front of Evan. Evan picked it up, his hand shaking. Only one button, just one, stood between life and death. He looked at the dragons. He looked at the saboteur. He looked at the burning walls around him, and he made his choice. The detonator felt heavier in Evan's hand than anything he had ever carried in his life. There was only one button on it, one glowing red trigger that could destroy the entire dragon family. The soldiers, the base, and even Evan himself. The room had gone silent. Even the alarms seemed quieter, as if the whole base was holding its breath. The saboteur lay against a broken wall, breathing hard. His visor was cracked, sparks flickering from his damaged armor. He glared at Evan with a mix of fear and rage. "Do it. Push it. End this. Before they end us," he whispered. The father dragon growled. A rumble that shook the floor. His wings spread wide in warning. But it was not a threat. It was fear. Fear that Evan might believe the saboteur's lies and choose death over trust. The mother dragon held her child close, her wings wrapped protectively around the little one, tears of molten gold running down her scales. "Human, please, let us live," she whispered, her voice fragile but full of faith. Evan's heart pounded so hard he could hear it echo in his ears. He looked at the dragon's creatures the base called monsters. But all he saw was a family, a mother, a father, and a child who had done nothing wrong. He thought about the purge chamber, the flames chasing him in the tunnel, the mother dragon's cries, the father's roar of grief, the way the baby clung to him even though he was human. These dragons were not monsters, they were parents. And parents wanted the same thing everywhere, to protect their child. Evan took a slow breath. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he tightened his grip on the detonator. The saboteur gasped. The dragons tensed. The soldiers behind the lockdown barrier shouted. And Evan crushed the detonator with his bare hands. Sparks exploded from the device, small electric bursts dancing across his fingers. The detonator shattered into pieces. Falling to the ground like broken glass, the signal was destroyed. The bombs could not be triggered anymore. The saboteur screamed, "Nitrogen monoxide! You fool! You doomed us all!" But nothing exploded. The base did not collapse. The world did not end. Instead, everything became still. The father dragon lowered his massive head slowly. Eyes wide with disbelief, the mother dragon let out a soft sob of relief. The little dragon chirped weakly, reaching out toward Evan as if she understood what he had done. Evan dropped to his knees, exhausted, smoke rising from his burned hands. He felt like his entire body was shaking. But he managed a weak smile. "It's over." He whispered, "You're safe." The soldiers finally forced open the lockdown barrier. Blue and white lights flashing behind them, they stormed in. Weapons raised only to freeze when they saw the scene before them. A human janitor kneeling on the ground, a shattered detonator at his feet. A massive dragon family standing around him, not attacking. Not roaring, but watching over him like he was one of their own. The father dragon stepped forward first. His steps were slow, careful, gentle. He lowered his huge head until his snout touched the floor only inches from Evan. Then, he bowed, a deep, respectful bow. A bow of honor. A bow of gratitude. The soldiers stared in shock. Some lowering their weapons without realizing it. Never in history had a dragon bowed to a human. The mother dragon leaned closer. Her warm breath blowing over Evan like a soft wind. "You saved my child." "And us," she whispered. "Tell me, human, why?" Evan let out a tired laugh. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because no one else would. Maybe because I heard you crying. Maybe because someone had to help." The mother dragon blinked slowly. "You risked your life for a species, not your own." "That is rare." The father dragon growled softly, not in anger. But, in agreement, he gently nudged Evan with the side of his snout, lifting him to his feet as if encouraging him to stand proud. The base commander arrived next, pushing through the crowd of soldiers. His face went pale when he saw Evan. You stopped the purge." He asked in disbelief. "You saved him?" Evan nodded, too tired to speak. The commander swallowed hard, then slowly raised his hand in a respectful salute. "You saved not only them, but all of us," he said quietly. "Today?" A janitor did what an entire base could not. The room fell silent again as everyone processed.